Guys, let's be real, hitchhiking was a bad idea to begin with. I'm your host Yusuf, and these are 10 scary hitchhiking stories that will make you want to take an Uber. Make sure you subscribe and ring that bell to get notified whenever we upload a new video. Anyways, my Uber's here, so I'm just gonna... Number 10, head trauma. From a former Redditor, there's this middle-aged man who lives in the town that I'm from. He was a genuinely sweet and caring person, and mind, this is a really small town. One day he picked up a hitchhiker just outside of town. He told him to jump in the bed of the truck and he'll drive him to Walmart. About halfway there, the hitchhiker shot him in the back of the head for no reason. He didn't even steal anything. And if I remember correctly, he got caught. Henry didn't pass away, but he's permanently disabled and has severe brain damage. I remember when I first heard that and it scared the crap out of me. This was probably about 12 years ago now, but I still think about it anytime someone talks about hitchhikers. It scares me to think someone would do something like that just because. Number 9, he seems familiar. From Redditor Jason is so handsome. Not my story, but my history teacher's hitchhiker story. As a teenager, my teacher lived in Cook County, Illinois, and frequently would walk around town / the city as most people do. One day he was offered a ride by a largish man in a car and hitchhiked home. The driver had a clown suit and makeup kit in the back of his car because he said he worked as a clown part-time, which should have rung some bells, but he thought nothing of it. So he got driven to his mom's house and thanked the driver and left. My history teacher said the driver was one of the most polite people he has ever met. A few years later, my teacher found out that the man he got into a car with was John Wayne Gacy Jr. Number 8, a friend in need is a friend indeed. From Redditor Iran RPCV, I stopped around sunset when I saw someone at the side of the interstate on the way to Phoenix from Tucson. As soon as I stopped the car, he and 3 more people got into the car. Before I could say anything, a spotlight hit my mirror, and a state police officer came up asking if I was okay, and started questioning my new passengers in Spanish. He said to me, "You know you have a carload of undocumented immigrants here, don't you?" He then said I could turn them over to him and he would keep them in jail overnight and turn them into the INS in the morning, take them up to the next exit and drop them off, or take them to where they were originally headed. Not quite sure I understood him, I asked him to repeat. He said the same thing, and I said that if he didn't mind, I would take them to their destination, which turned out to be an orchard a few miles up the road. He wished me a good evening and left while my passengers kept repeating, "Amigo, amigo." Number 7, that'll leave a mark. From Redditor Samat, my older brother picked up a hitchhiker once after a night of light drinking. The way I heard the story relayed was that after driving for a few minutes, the man pulled out a shotgun. God knows how he concealed it, the cops never figured out that detail of the story, and declared he was going to steal the car. Well, my brother being the self-proclaimed tough guy, that he wasn't going to have this. So he stopped and tried to pull the guy out of the car to the ground. Next thing you know, my brother has a shotgun wound that blew off a chunk of his bicep, and the hitchhiker runs off. He made a decent recovery, but he still has a chunk gone from his arm and isn't able to lift heavy things with that one anymore. I will never pick up a hitchhiker. Smart idea. Number 6, what a nice guy. From Redditor A Brutal Cow, not my story but my dad's. He was traveling through Arizona on his way to Mexico. He looked to the side of the road and saw a man hitchhiking. My dad pulled over and asked the guy where he was going, to which the man said, the next town over. My dad, being a very trusting man, and this being the 70s or 80s, decided he would give him a ride. While they were driving, they started talking, and my father asked for his name. His name was Derp. My dad, quite shocked, looked at him and replied, "Holy crap, that's my name." They had a few small conversations, and at the next town, my dad let him out and continued to Mexico. He eventually reached the border. He pulled up and the border official asked to see his license. He took a good long look at the license. The official then took off his big aviator sunglasses and told him to pull over to the side. My dad got out of the car and they put him in a room while they searched his car. He was sitting in the room for a good few hours admiring the entire wall of confiscated tequila, and the officer walked back in and apologized for the wait. My dad asked what the reason was and the officer replied, "There's a warrant out for the arrest of Derp." Once again dazed, my dad asked, "What for?" The officer replied, "Ending somebody." My dad damn near crapped his pants. Number 5, well that's awkward. This comes from Sky from California. I remember one time I had been waiting for forever at this gas station, a few hours outside Berlin, and finally this couple picked me up. I was just so stoked to see anyone stop at that point, and they seemed totally cool as well. They were both German and super friendly and talked away. Later on though, the girl took a phone call in German and sounded a bit distressed on the phone, and was totally giving some stares to the guy on the wheel. And when she got off the phone, she just started yelling at him, and they had this huge argument in German. I couldn't understand a word. I still have no idea what it was all about, but I ended up back on the side of the road like 10 minutes later. I was kinda glad because he was getting totally heated. Number 4, why did he have to ask? From Ella in Stirling, we were heading up to the Scottish Highlands to meet some friends at a lodge kind of thing for the weekend, and picked up this English guy along the way with the intention of taking him maybe an hour or 2 on his way. He was going to Aberdeen, he said. Basically though, we were talking and getting along well, and explained our plans for the weekend, and he said he wanted to come along and stay up in the lodge for the weekend, and basically that he had no ties or friends in Aberdeen. He was just heading somewhere. It was for our friend's birthday, and she wouldn't have been having any of it, and anyway, the guy was a little weird, so we said no, and of course the rest of the trip was an hour-long awkward silence. Maybe it's my fault. Number 3, not grateful. This one's from Dixon. I was driving to a festival down the East Coast and pulled over to get gas at this station. There's a guy sitting down with a dog and a piece of cardboard that says West. And I'm going west, and I normally quite like picking up hitchhikers, so I strike up a conversation and end up giving the guy a lift. He's a nice guy and we chat away, but he seems to be getting more and more agitated as we go along the road. He starts getting really short and a bit snappy, and is going in and out of sleep, and genuinely starts telling me not to steal his stuff or leave him in the middle of nowhere, and by the end of the road, he's telling me if I try to steal his dog, he's going to end me. He goes back to sleep and then wakes up again later, and right away kind of nonchalantly rolls down the window and spews out of it. I felt bad for the guy, but that's when I pulled over and told him I wasn't going any further. To be honest, he took it surprisingly well and even thanked me for going that far. Still, I had to clean a spew off my car. Number 2, serial liar. Christian says this: I managed to hitchhike from Calais to Moscow and actually didn't have any particularly bad lifts, but I did ride with a serial buller at one point. This guy was mad for it, loved a lie. He started off with some believable stuff and then started spouting out stuff so quickly I didn't even know what to say. Obviously I didn't call him out on it, or he probably would have told me to get out, but he went from having been in a bar fist fight at one point to his sister having slept with George Clooney in about 15 minutes. It was actually pretty enjoyable, to be fair. Kept me entertained at least. The most ridiculous lie was that he had genuinely once had a pet lion, which he kept in his garden. I asked him questions about what he fed it, and he just said burgers. It was hard to keep a straight face. Number 1, bank robbers. Stacy from Minnesota has the best story for last year. Okay, so this is hilarious in hindsight, but at the time I was so scared, like so scared. So I was looking for a lift to Auckland in New Zealand coming from Rotorua, and these 2 guys picked me up. Baseball cats, big guys with muscles, and a big truck of a car. But they were friendly and chatted away, and we're going to Auckland, they said, so it was pretty much ideal. That was until a police car came into sight in the distance, and the 2 guys looked at each other kind of strangely and seemed to get really anxious, and then were muttering away, so I asked them if everything was alright. The guys looked at me and then at each other and then at me again, and there was a bit of a silence, and they said, "We're on the run," or something like that, and explained that they had robbed a bank a month before or so, and the police had been after them ever since. I go completely silent, and one of the guys says that they should just drive past it and it'll be fine, but the other is talking about literally ramming into the police car because it might recognize them, and they're arguing and getting louder and louder, and I'm literally speechless, and the police car is getting closer and closer. They're full on screaming at each other, and in the end they just drive past the car slowly and wave and then start howling with laughter, both of them. They turn around and are like, "We got you there, only joking," and my heart is racing. I was so scared. We actually stayed in touch. Thanks for watching. Those were 10 scary hitchhiking stories that will make you take an Uber. Leave a like and comment if you think we missed anything, and we hope you have a scary day.